Thank you. We have my my gavel today, so we've gavelled in. Welcome to the Senate Committee on Education, and welcome to those online and present by phone. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Dendera Loop.
Here.
Senator Hardy.
Here.
Senator Hammond.
I'm here.
Senator Lang.
Here.
Senator Buck.
Here.
Senator Danyate.
Here.
Senator Dennis, or Chairman Dennis, sorry.
Thank you. I'm here. All right, so we've got, let's see, everybody's here. We do have a quorum. On housekeeping, for those on video, please keep yourself muted when not speaking. The committee information is available on Nellis, which can be accessed through the legislature's website. You may also watch our meetings through Nellis or through the legislature's YouTube channel. There we go. If testifying or providing public comment, please register to participate through Nellis. You will receive an email confirmation with call-in information. Detailed instructions for participating are available on the help page, linked in a banner at the top of every page on Nellis. When testifying, state and spell your name and affiliation, if any. We'll take public comment at the end of the meeting. The chair and I will be limiting public testimony and public comment to 2 minutes per person. Feel free to submit your comments in writing and briefly summarize them in spoken testimony. You may also submit written comments as outlined in the agenda by emailing or faxing them to our committee manager. Courtesy and respect in our interactions, even if we may not agree. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm going to change the order of the agenda just because I want to make sure that we get everything done that we need to today. And we have a bill that we're going to hear. So I'm going to start with SB 27 first. Hopefully we have everybody on that's going to present the bill. And after we are done with SB 27, then we'll go to the INVEST presentation and then the COVID response. So whoever's going to, I can't remember who's presenting. I believe it's the Department of Ed. I see the superintendent.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Sounds good.
Great.
Right.
Great.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Dennis. Thank you for having me here today. Vice Chair Dendera Loop, members of the Education Committee. State Superintendent Joan Ebert for the record. I am here today presenting Senate Bill 27, known as our Licensure Streamlining Bill. I'm also joined by Deputy Superintendent Felicia Gonzalez. She oversees our Educator Effectiveness Division. This bill was pre-filed by Governor Sisolak on behalf of the Department of Education, but this bill truly is a collaborative partnership between our school districts, NAS, NASA, other entities, as well as all of our stakeholders, quite frankly, and you'll see and hear as we move forward. I also know that we have some friendly amendments that we'll ask for your consideration today as we present. So this bill covers many different sections and topics. So I will take each one, go through them, and I know there may be questions and answers as we go. Section 1 aligns the state superintendent's authority to initiate investigations into licensed educator misconduct with existing statutory authority regarding private school educators. It also allows for the state superintendent to delegate within the department authority to perform investigative functions related to licensure investigations. To make this clear, the department collaborated with other entities, NAS, Clark County School District, Washoe County School District, and in this area, Washoe County School District will be submitting a friendly amendment in section 1.2 that reflects this investigative power is only related to licensed employees pursuant to NRS 391.031. There was also questions in regard to this section if the state superintendent was giving up complete authority, and that is not the case. What it does is it expands it so that our, if our chief investigator does come to fruition, and we do have a request for cost neutral specific title to that, but they would be the ones to do the investigation, which would then come to myself and the State Board of Education. Similarly, in sections 13, 14, and 15, would like to allow the delegation of authority to the department to suspend, revoke licenses by the State Board for those components. This would be appropriate in circumstances in which statute requires action within a certain time frame. For example, we have in the case of a non-compliance with child support and other areas of public safety interest. The department has also submitted an amendment to restore language related to paraprofessionals in sections 2, 3, 9, 10, 11, and 12. This removes the original proposed language regarding paraprofessional standards as prescribed by the Commission on Professional Standards. This does not remove the licensing of our coaches. I do know that there will be a friendly amendment there as well. In section 4, we create an account for teacher incentives in the general fund. This was really important over the last several years. There have been issues with carryover dollars in these accounts. And as you know, it's very important to have that ability, especially in those areas where we have funds that can be used for newly transferred teachers into Title I schools, retained teachers into Title I schools, etc. Section 5 renames the teacher school supplies assistance account to a reimbursement account. In sections 6 and 7, there are currently items that were made for recommendation, but as I introduced the bill this afternoon, we have had great conversation with several of the school districts and NAS to introduce clarity in that area. Section 8 updates the membership of the Commission on Professional Standards, also known as COPS, to include the Dean of the College or School of Education as applicable at one of the universities or college in the Nevada system of higher education, or a representative of one of the colleges or schools of education as applicable, nominated by such a dean for appointment by the governor. Existing language did not include the colleges within NSHE. It only had the university, as well as it being able to nominate a representative for the COPS. And as you all are aware, it's very important in developing those expectations for licensure within the state of Nevada, and we felt it important to make sure that they that voice was heard. Section 16 allows an employee designated by the state superintendent to bring charges before the state board on the superintendent's behalf when cause exists. Section 17 allows for out-of-state programs that have been approved by the Commission on Professional Standards in Education to apply for Teach Nevada Scholarship Awards. Section 17 also allows for the State Board of Education to prioritize the awarding of grants to recipients who complete a special education endorsement and removes the requirement for a student to complete an endorsement to teach English as a second language or special education. Section 19 updates the Educational Involvement Accord to the School Family Compact and allows for guidance provided by the department related to the development of a school family compact and removes prescribed language. This was important in two ways. First being that we are aligned with the national standards, as well as having input from the local school districts with their families and communities to have those compacts followed. So initially it was just a state function. Now we want to make sure that we're aligned at the federal level, as well as that the school districts themselves are developing that compact with those that they serve. Going back and adding 2 teacher incentives in section 4, it does create the one budgetary category for the state allocation with multiple allowances for offers for more flexibility within the department to meet districts' requests and more consistent incentive amounts to the teacher regardless how they are qualified for the incentive. The focus of the department is to provide all students equitable access to the high quality teachers, and therefore we're not adversely incentivizing in a specific way. Senator Dennis, I believe that covers all of our components with in this bill, and we stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you very much. You mentioned that Washoe's going to bring an amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Washoe County School District as well as NAS.
Okay. Are you okay with the amendments? Have you talked with them?
Yes, sir. I did have the opportunity to speak with them.
Okay.
Excuse me, my staff did, and I have read and accept what they are proposing as a friendly amendment.
Okay. So what I would like to do, I know we're going to have questions. Let's hear the 2 amendments just so we get those out of the way, so we don't ask questions about those and then have to come back. So if we could have the Washoe one, if Washoe could go first, propose their amendment, and then NAS. And I believe Ms. Lindsay Anderson is going to do that.
Hello, Senator Dennis. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lindsay Anderson on behalf of the Washoe County School District. I certainly appreciate the Department of Ed working with us and apologize for the late submission. It was just sent to your staff momentarily ago because we just agreed on the language today. So again, apologize for not getting it to you sooner. Our amendment is relatively simple. In section 1, subsection 2, that includes the language that may investigate on the superintendent's own initiative or in response to any complaint lodged with the superintendent. Instead of person, we have suggested any licensed employee as defined by NRS 391.031. And Senator, if you'd like me to, I can just share my screen and pull up a screenshot, or we can just stick with the verbal outline. That's it. Mr. Chairman, I can't hear you if you're giving me instructions.
Sorry, I was telling you that you were muted and I was muted. Yes, go. I would go ahead and share the screen. I don't know if we tested that, but hopefully it'll work, and hopefully you have the ability. There you go. That's perfect. And because I don't know that all the committee members got I know I have it in front of me because I just got it, but I think it's being sent to them, so this will be faster. Okay, so you're just making that change to licensed employee as defined by NRS 391.031, right?
Correct. Just to make sure it's clear that it's not any person, but a licensed employee with the school district.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I just want to ask my members of the committee, any questions on that particular amendment, or is that clear enough? Senator Buck, I believe I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, Chair Dennis, thank you so much, and members of the committee. I was just wondering how this came about. Is there a problem with non-licensed staff in schools?
So are you asking specifically on the amendment, how that came about? Okay, yeah. So
yeah,
Ms. Anderson?
all that change came in.
Yep, Ms. Anderson, can you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lindsay Anderson for the Washoe County School District. Essentially, I think there was some confusion about the intent of that original language, and after review from our general counsel's office, their request was to just make sure that language reflected other statutory authority and didn't broaden it at all. We understand that the intent from the department was not to broaden it, but we believe this makes that language extra clear in the statutory proposal.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee on this? Yes, Vice Chair Dondero.
Sorry, apologies, not on this specific area, so go ahead.
Sorry, I keep muting myself so I don't create echo and I forget to unmute myself. Any other? Okay, so we'll get to the main questions just a second. Okay, all right, thank you very much. And so I believe we have another amendment, and I believe they said from NAS, if I heard that right. And I don't know who's going to present that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents. And we have a friendly amendment to SB 27. The first part of the amendment would remove the section of the bill that requires coaches to be licensed. That would be removed. And this second part of our amendment is...
Hold on, before you go on, do you know where that is in there? Sarah Nix was helping me with that, and I hope that it got on the amendment that you're looking at. That was our conversation, and I do have a message from her that reflects that. Okay, all right, go ahead.
I'm so sorry if you don't have it in front of you right now. The second part of our amendment deals with the teacher reimbursement supply account. And what this would do was take out sections 6 and 7 of the bill, and we would continue to reimburse teachers just as has been done in the last year. It's worked very well in the school districts. Keep that same format, but we would add that teachers must have the ability to say how they want to spend that money in their classroom. There has been a few issues with that. So this amendment would clarify that the teachers have the ability and the right to determine how they want to use that money. It doesn't mean they can't pool money if they decide to do that, but it would be up to the teacher. And the third thing that is in there is in section 6, paragraph 7. It would allow the Department of Ed to do periodic auditing at checking on how the money has been spent.
Okay.
And Senator, if that is not clearly written, we will be happy to resubmit that so you can see it more clearly. I'm sorry, as Ms. Anderson pointed out, this has been done very quickly. Today, we appreciate the cooperation of the Department of Ed meeting with us and going over our issues and concerns with the bill. But things have been done hurriedly, and we can submit that in writing to a greater degree. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, because we did get from Ms. Nick, SB 27 amendment in the document. Is that the one that we're talking about?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Just so the committee members know which exhibit that is. It's like almost to the bottom, and it says amendment Joan Eber, Superintendent DOE, SB 27. I believe that's the one we're referencing. Yeah, Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my simple question is, Ms. Brzezinski said that this would be removing section 6 and 7 and continue, quote, the reimbursement to the teacher. But right now, does the teacher not have a fund to draw from as opposed to be reimbursed from?
Senator Hardy, Mary Brzezinski for the record. The disbursement of the money from the account, as you well know, the original intent was to reimburse teachers who were spending a lot of money out of their own pockets for school supplies. And so when this was initially put into effect, I believe it was maybe the 2017 legislative session, it was to help teachers. And each district has done a little bit differently in how they disperse the money. In the last session in 2019, Senator Dondera Loop helped us have a little more flexibility, or help school districts have a little more flexibility with how they dispersed the money. The districts would like to be able to keep that ability to, or that flexibility to disperse the money. But some of the teachers had concerns that they were not getting enough voice in how some of the money was spent in some of the schools. So this friendly amendment would clarify that they do have a right to step forward and say how they want to spend their money. And that's what we're trying to do in this section. And then in section 6, subsection 7, that part of the bill does allow the State Department to check on how the money has been spent in districts, randomly checking just to make sure that things are going according to what the legislature intended. And I hope I've answered your question.
Not at all. But it was a wonderful explanation.
A great explanation to a question not asked. Okay.
So my question's even more basic than that. If a teacher is reimbursed, as I understand it, teachers can't be reimbursed for taxes. So are we reimbursing a teacher who's paid out of her pocket but doesn't get reimbursed for taxes? Or is this a fund that exists that they can draw from, that's through the school vendor, as it were, instead of going to the store and buying something and then saying, I want to be reimbursed for what I do? I mean, we all want teachers not to have to dip into their own pocket for things that they're using for their classroom. So that's the intent. And so along with the intent, are we not reimbursing them completely through this amendment, or how was it not being done that way initially anyway? In other words, can they draw down, or are they getting reimbursed?
And Senator Hardy, Mary Brzezinski for the record, and we do have school personnel on today that can talk to that. I'm sure Ms. Anderson and Mr. Keating can help me with this answer, but it is done differently in different school districts, how they are reimbursing, whether people are turning in receipts or they're getting cards, like credit cards. Some of the districts are doing that way. I think Ms. Anderson can explain how they're doing it in Washoe, which has worked very well, if she doesn't mind coming in and responding to that, if you don't mind that, Senator Dennis.
I mean, where I'm going with this is I would like it not to be a minimal reimbursement. I would like the reimbursement, if it is, to be the whole thing, and therefore I would like it to be a drawdown thing rather than a reimbursement that's only a partial reimbursement. That's where I'm going.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, let's come back to that. That's, I think you're, that could be part of this amendment, but that sounds like an amendment to an amendment, and I don't want to get into the weeds yet on that. But as we'll have an opportunity, let's just put that aside for right now, and we'll come back to answer that question, especially as we get the districts on. Okay, so those are the two. I don't believe, just to clarify, we have an amendment from Washoe that they just sent, so we just got that. We have an amendment from the department, and I need the department to clarify this. The department has their own amendment, and then the third one would be this one that we were just talking about with Ms. Brzezinski, that we don't have yet, but we will be getting that. Ms. Sturm, is that your understanding?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jen Sturm, Committee Policy Analyst. That is my understanding as well.
Okay, and is there somebody from the department that can just verify that the other amendment?
Superintendent Ebert, for the record, are you speaking to the department's amendment or the one presented?
The department.
The department's amendment you should already, Jen Sturm already has.
Right, and that's the one that's in our packet. So so you should have two, and then the third one will be coming. The one that Ms. Brzezinski just presented will be coming. Okay, I saw Vice Chair Dondera Loop had her hand up.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to make some clarifying statements here. My bill was Senate Bill 324 last session on the reimbursements. The reimbursements had nothing to do with taxes. The reimbursements were from the teacher reimbursement account. We called that an assistance account because the word reimbursement created a little bit of an issue to the way the districts handed the funds to the teachers as they purchased materials. So some school districts chose to reimburse teachers. Some school districts chose to give those teachers that money and then allow them to use it for their classroom. There were some stipulations of what they could spend that on. That fund was swept when we had the pandemic and we had to cut back on some things. So in my opinion, what is happening here in section 6 is they are undoing the work that we did last session. Just to clarify for Senator Hardy, that fund was a teacher may be reimbursed up to $250. All that was based on how many teachers we had and how much money was in the fund. And I believe the final number that was settled on, and I'm not going to be exact, but it was around $192 per teacher. They could choose, of course, not to use it. They could choose to second grade teachers, if they wanted science things, they could choose to go together. But the principal could not gather those funds from them and use them for whatever they wanted. It was for teacher reimbursement for their classrooms. So I would be remiss if I didn't say clearly I need some input about how we want to go forward on this, because I don't want this to be lost for our teachers.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to have Ms. Ebert, if she would just clarify for the record that is accurate, so that we can, and then I want to go to, and then I know Senator Lang has a question also, but Ms. Ebert, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Superintendent Ebert, for the record. As Senator Dondero Loop was just noting, in Section 6 and in Section 7, placing that language back as originally intended, and then adding the language which is coming to the group in regard to making sure that teachers are the ones that are directing the funds. So I think you've captured it all.
Okay, great. So this isn't eliminating that, right, from the statute, what was put in last time? Or is it? I guess that's what I want to clarify.
Yeah, Superintendent Ebert, for the record. So when you look at, I'll go Section 6 in particular, it's actually placing that language back in. The problem that was trying to be solved is that last piece that was just expressed, that the teachers have direction of those funds that they're intended to be used for, whether they pool the funds, as the example that the senator gave, or that they individually go out and make a purchase, either using, and the districts across our state are using different methodologies, which is fine. And they actually, I'm pleased to report to all of you, they all increase the percent of funds that were expended by teachers since the last biennium. That being said, that they can use a debit card that may be issued to them, so they're not out of pocket initially. If they do, if the school district does set up a reimbursement, that they can be reimbursed by bringing in a receipt, that those methodologies are made available across. Most are using a debit card. But going back to Section 6, there was, and 7, there was specific language that was initially, as filed, being asked to be removed, and now it's being asked to put back. So in line 19, actually putting back the word assistance, we had recommended reimbursements. So putting back that language, and then adding, as Ms. Brzezinski had noted with the amendment. So that was just one example, but putting the language back in the bill in Section 6 and 7 completely, and then adding the new subsection 6 and 7 that you should have shortly, which do two things, or excuse me, adding the one, which gives the teacher sole discretion on how that money is expended.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That helps. Senator Lang, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Chair Dennis, and I really thank Vice Chair Dondero Loop for clarifying, because I want to make sure that we're treating teachers like the professionals that they are, and that they can choose to spend that money on whatever they need for their classroom. But my question has to do with athletic coaches and a special license for athletic coaches. Are we putting this language in there because we don't have enough coaches, or what is the reasoning for that? And do these coaches have to go through, to be able to coach and get that special license? What do they have to go through to get that? What's the criteria?
Thank you, Senator. For the record, State Superintendent Joan Ebert. I would like to turn that question over to Deputy Gonzalez.
Thank you, Superintendent. Felicia Gonzalez, Deputy Superintendent for the Nevada Department of Education, for the record. The intent behind this is that we believe that it is in the public interest to issue licenses to educational personnel, both to ensure that educators are properly qualified and to screen out individuals with certain types of criminal convictions on their record. The legal requirement for licensure does not currently extend to athletic coaches that are employed but are not licensed personnel of the school. In other words, they are paid or volunteer coaches. The goal of that language is to be able to regulate coaches, but to add a level of public safety by subjecting them to background checks at regular intervals.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hammond, I believe you had a question.
I did, and I had I was looking at the section 14 that was being amended, but I think I found the answer to it. The only question I guess I had is looking at this process. You're going to put a lot of notifications on your website as far as a list of those actions that you can suspend or revoke a license on the website. When all is said and done, let's say somebody goes through the whole process, a license has been suspended, will there also be a place on the website which will explain the action and what happened to personnel, or is that not put anywhere? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's always nice to know if there was an action taken against personnel, before they seek employment somewhere else, maybe even outside the state. And I know we've talked about this many years ago. Is this something that you guys are also going to be putting on that website, or is that something you cannot do?
Thank you, Senator. For the record, State Superintendent Joan Ebert, it is actually made public record because we do have to bring those actions to the State Board of Education.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions on these amendments? Okay, I'm not seeing anything right now. Okay, so let's go to just general questions on the bill, and which would also include the amendments. Who has on the committee? Who has questions? Yeah, Senator Buck, I believe I saw your hand go up.
So on section 4, I believe it says that you're going to create an account for teacher incentives. Did you go over that? Sorry. I just wondered, like, how do you incentivize Title I schools to perform if it's going to both underperforming and Title I schools? Do we have any Title I schools that are performing?
Okay, so Senator Buck, you're asking the department, right? So
yes.
So yeah, so someone from the department can answer that.
Thank you, Superintendent Ebert, for the record. These funds have, as you well know, have been very helpful to specifically Title I schools and working. And actually, school districts themselves have been adding additional funds as well to incentivize teachers going, exceptional educators going to our students that are most in need. So what this does is that this also expands if there are any, it puts it into the account and expands so that if there are any funds that need to roll forward, that we have that capability during this time.
I think, I mean, just to comment, Chair, it's a great idea. Creating a fund in which can build momentum around Title I schools and incentivizing teachers to go there. I'd just be curious to see, because you don't want to disincentivize if they become Title I and they start performing, to where you stop giving the dollars to those schools who are still Title I and in free reduced lunch counts are high.
Thank you. Noted. Okay, other questions? Let me see. Any other questions on the bill before we go to those in favor, those opposed, those neutral? Yes, Senator Buck.
What is currently in place for paraprofessionals? I know that there were restrictions for paraprofessionals in Title I schools, but I was unsure if there was any for just regular regular schools?
So I'm assuming that would be,
The department.
yeah, the department, Ms. Eber.
Thank you, Superintendent Ebert. For the record, I am asking Deputy Gonzalez to answer that question.
Thank you. Deputy Superintendent Felicia Gonzalez, for the record, could you please clarify your question?
Yes, I just wondered what if you want to be a paraprofessional in the school district and work in a special education classroom in a non-Title I school, is there certain qualifications? I'm just looking at, a lot of schools hire parents, they go through background checks. It's a great entry-level position, see if they like it, and then they go back to school and become a teacher. I'm just, don't want a lot of different restrictions put in place that are going to limit who schools can hire to become paraprofessionals, because inevitably they may go and become teachers.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, for clarifying that question. So currently, there are federal requirements that parapros in Title I schools have to meet. There is a test that the state board adopted to meet those requirements.
Chair, if I may ask a qualifying question.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just wondering then, so I know that was in Title I schools. Does that transcend now to all schools, or is it still just in Title I schools?
Deputy Superintendent Felicia Gonzalez, for the record, that is just for Title I schools.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, I'm not hearing any. If I missed it, just speak right up. We're going to go to, let me see. I should pull out my script to make sure I don't get off here. We'll now hear testimony in support of the bill. And I know that we've got of SB 27. So VPS, would you please add the first caller to give testimony in support?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on SB 27, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 411, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hi, this is Lindsay Anderson, LINDSAYANDERSON, on behalf of the Washoe County School District. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I feel rusty at this. And the bill, the number of amendments made it complicated, but I can say that on behalf of the school district, we appreciate the Department of Ed working with us to address all 3 of our major issues by amendment. So while we sort of reserve our right to offer our full support until we can see legal language drafted, we are certainly in support of all of the conceptual amendments that have been proposed today and the direction that the bill is going with the leadership of the Department of Ed. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next one.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 232, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 232, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is David Dazlich, last name D-A-Z-L-I-C-H. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. Wanted to briefly offer our support for this legislation and the amendments. It has been one of our priorities to keep transparent and efficient education funding of our school districts. And we believe after speaking with CCSD and considering the amendments that this legislation does that. We would urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to the next one.
Caller with the last three digits 069, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 069, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Apologies. Good afternoon, Chair Dennis and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Kanani Espinoza, K-A-N-A-N-I-E-S-P-I-N-O-Z-A, with the Roe Law Group representing the Nevada system of higher education. We are speaking in support of Section 20 of Senate Bill 27, which would ensure that remaining appropriated funds to the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparedness, otherwise known as NITEP, would remain with the program rather than reverting to the general fund. This section would help make certain the continuity of the program and that the dedicated benefits remain with the program participants. And she looks forward to continuing our work and partnership with the Nevada Department of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Caller with the last three digits of 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Chris Daly, D-A-L-Y, Nevada State Education Association. NSCA has been the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSCA now supports SB 27 with the amendments to remove new requirements for licensure of paraprofessionals and coaches, clarification on the investigatory powers of the superintendent, and language regarding the teacher school supply assistance. NSCA represents educators across the state, including the majority of paraprofessionals in Nevada school districts. Since the introduction of SB 27, we've engaged the Nevada Department of Education regarding paraprofessional licensure, and we really do appreciate the department's agreement to remove this language from this bill at this time. Along with other education stakeholders, including the Washoe County School District and the Nevada Association of School Superintendents, NSCA had questions about some of the provisions of SB 27 as introduced. We appreciate the work of those education stakeholders and NDE to clarify language on the superintendent's power of investigation being limited to the area of licensure and the reversion to teacher school supply assistance language that we agreed on in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Caller with the last three digits of 699, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Dennis, members of the Education Committee. My name is Kenneth Varner, K-E-N-N-E-T-H-V-A-R-N-E-R, Associate Professor at UNLV and Director of UNLV's Teach Nevada and NITEP program. I'd like to speak on behalf of this bill, particularly Section 20 on the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparation. This year alone, NITEP has engaged in over 10 community-based partnerships, providing 1,250 hours of K-12 support beyond traditional practicum placements, over 1,000 hours of community-embedded service learning support, impacting over 680 students. Professional development for the NITEP Fellows includes over 800 hours of engagement this year alone. We're currently developing a micro-credential program, which this year will provide over 5,000 hours of professional development to the current NITEP Fellows, and will be a program that can be used by pre-service and in-service teachers throughout the state. Additionally, 4 research projects have looked at the recruitment and retention of math and science teachers in Nevada, housing vulnerability, and leadership from historically underrepresented groups in schools. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. All right, let's go to the next one.
Caller with the last three digits of 692, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
My name is Mary Przinski, MaryPierczynski, representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and we are in support of the bill as amended. We had concerns about this bill initially, and we really appreciate the work of our state superintendent and staff to alleviate some of those concerns with the amendments. So we are in support of the bill as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to the next one.
Thank you, sir. Public comment will be right with you.
Thank you. Just to remind while we're waiting, we are in testimony in support of SB 97.
Caller with the last three digits of 097, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Brad Keating, B-R-A-D, last name Keating, K-E-A-T-I-N-G, representing the Clark County School District. Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Committee on Education, for the record, Clark County School District supports SB 27 with the amendments that have been proposed today and the discussion and dialogue that you all have participated in. We just wanted to take a moment to thank NDE, specifically Superintendent Ebert, Deputy Gonzalez, and Sarah Nick, as well as all of the stakeholders, for working together all morning to find a resolution that we could bring to the table today. So the Clark County School District looks forward to working with NDE in the future as this bill moves forward and others come before this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Keating. And I misstated, it's that we're on SB 27 in support. We could have the next person go.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Okay. We'll now hear testimony in opposition to SB 27. Please add the next caller who's in opposition.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on SB 27, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to testify who is neutral on the bill?
To testify in neutral on SB 27, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 927, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hello, and thank you, Committee Chair Dennis and committee members. My name is Hava, H-A-W-A-H, Ahmed, A-H-M-A-D, and I am a proud graduate of the Washoe County School District, here representing the Clark County Education Association. The Clark County Education Association represents more than 18,000 licensed professionals in Clark County School District. We are the largest independent teachers union in the country and in the state of Nevada. We engage in bipartisan advocacy for advancing public education in Nevada. CCEA would like to voice their neutral position on Senate Bill 27. CCEA appreciates the intent to streamline due process for every educator across the state in this bill. However, CCEA is concerned that the broad authority this bill gives to the superintendent of public instruction or her designee will lead to investigations that may conflict with CCEA CCSD bargaining agreements. Further, CCEA is concerned that this bill's examination requirement on paraprofessionals to teach special education will further exacerbate Clark County School District teacher retention issues and provide an economic and educational barrier to new paraprofessionals from entering special education. While the implementation of a special license authorizing an individual to perform duties of athletic coaching or administrative personnel will provide a central database of all licensees to ensure student safety, CCEA believes that the responsibility for such regulations and federal compliance should fall to the Commission on Professional Standards. CCEA would like to thank all parties involved in the drafting of this legislation and appreciates the Washoe County School District's amendment clarifying language for what licensed persons means in Section 1.2. We cannot wait to see the full amendments and would like to support the fine-tuning of this bill in any way we can. Respectfully, Hava Ahmed.
Thank you. Do we have any others wishing to testify in neutral?
Chair, there are no more callers to testify at this time.
Okay. And just as a final check, is there anyone else wishing to testify? I hate, that there might have been a technical issue for someone trying to get in. Could we, if there's somebody that just missed on one of the other ones, could we check to see if they're out there and we can get their testimony?
Yes, Chair. To testify in support on SB 27, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
And I'm okay if they're in support, opposed, or neutral. If they just had a technical issue, if they call in, I think I'd like to get that testimony.
Chair, there are no callers in support on SB 27 at this time.
Okay. So
to testify in opposition on SB 27, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time. So if you want to testify in neutral on SB 27, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 398, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hello, this is Sabra Newby representing UNLV. My name is Sabranewy. I apologize for the technical snafu. I was trying to speak in favor of SB 27. My colleague, Dr. Kenny Varner, who is also the director of Teach for Nevada and NITEP at UNLV, covered some of the details, but just wanted to echo his support specifically of Section 20. We do look forward to working with the Department of Education, and particularly as it relates to Section 18 going forward. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman Dennis and the Senate Education Committee for indulging my technological efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any other? I want to give Ms. Eber, or Superintendent Eber, a chance to just finalize, come forward and finalize if you wish to make some final comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. And again, thank you to all for hearing our bill. As noted through public comment and at the beginning of our presentation, this was a collaborative effort, a lot of conversation spanning many different topics. So Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to moving forward.
Thank you. And sounds like you need to finalize some discussions there, and I think you can work this out. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, unless if anybody, any other committee member have any final questions that we didn't get to. Okay, great. I will go ahead and close the hearing on SB 27, and we are going to go back to the top of the agenda. We're going to have a presentation on investing in Nevada's education, students, and teachers, better known as the INVEST plan. And we've got several here. I know we got Dr. Stevens, Dr. Dave from Churchill County, Dr. Dave Jensen from Humboldt County, and Wayne Workman from Lyon County. And I believe they're going to give the presentation.
Thank you so much, Chairman Dennis. Good afternoon to Chairman Dennis, to you and the members of the Senate Education Committee. I am Dr. Summer Stevens, Superintendent of Churchill County School District, and also the Vice President of the Nevada Association of School Superintendents, or NAS. This afternoon, several of us will speak with you regarding our Invest in Education priorities for this session. Again, with me today are Dr. Dave Jensen, Superintendent of Humboldt County, and Mr. Wayne Workman, past President of NAS and Superintendent of Lyon County. The Nevada Association of School Superintendents is a statewide organization which supports our 17 school districts and the state charter school authorities leaders, impacting over 720 schools in our great state. Our purpose is to take action through leadership, training, support, and advocacy to ensure the highest quality of education for all students in Nevada. Today, we share with you our INVEST priorities as a common single voice from NAS. At times, we know that we have divergent needs and visions, so at those times, we do not speak as a whole. But today, we come to you with our common voice and our common need related to these INVEST priorities. In the last 10 months, school districts have had to completely rethink operations in light of the global pandemic. This crisis has brought a particular focus to the role of that school districts play for students and for the community as we provide access to essential functions from learning to safety to nutrition and beyond. As such, we articulate today's key priorities that must be realized moving forward, including 3 priorities: streamlining, connecting, and funding. One priority of NAS includes streamlining. Not during this time of extremely strained and stressed educational systems, nor in any time moving forward from here, can we afford to have staff and students spending time and energy on non-essential, often unfunded requirements. NASC is asking for the following: the elimination of and the prohibition of any and all unfunded mandates and any legislation that is repetitive or focused on special interests that are out of line with our necessary laser-like focus on learning, the Nevada statewide plan for improvement, and the well-being of children and staff. This will allow our educators and staff to focus their time, energy, and resources on serving students' needs instead of complying with laws that may be repetitive, unnecessary, or not focused on learning. Also, we ask for the removal of rigid and time-consuming requirements around testing, student discipline, and staff evaluations in order to allow educators to focus on student achievement, student academic goals, as well as the development of becoming life-ready citizens. I'm going to now turn it over to Superintendent Workman to talk about our second priority.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens, Chair Dennis, and honorable committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present our NAS investment document. My name is Wayne Workman, and I have the privilege of serving as the superintendent for the Lyon County School District. Although my comments will be brief, I respectfully ask that you not mistake my brevity for a lack of importance. If we have learned anything from the COVID-19 global pandemic, it is the importance of connecting. A basic human need that has always existed, has been the need to connect with other human beings, including family, friends, teachers, students, coworkers, healthcare providers, and the list goes on depending on individual circumstances. Our overall health is greatly affected by this need, and the aforementioned global pandemic has only exacerbated this issue. Interestingly, in today's world, the basic human need now includes the need to connect through electronic means, such as we are doing now, and this, of course, requires devices and high-speed internet. The pandemic has greatly exposed the lack of access to these services in our Nevada communities, but even more so in our rural and frontier areas. We have a long way to go before we can say that all Nevada citizens have equal access to this basic human need. School district budgets are not currently designed to include funding for devices and high-speed internet at home. Although these devices and internet connectivity are absolutely critical for students and staff so that the curricula and learning materials can be accessed, it is certainly not an exclusive issue to education. More than ever before, government services are offered electronically and require devices and high-speed internet to access them. Because of this, it can easily be argued that high-speed internet connectivity and access to devices should be treated like other fundamental utilities, such as water and electricity. Further, it can be argued that high-speed internet connectivity and access to devices are a fundamental need in providing a free and appropriate public education to our deserving students. This is a community and state issue that needs to be solved holistically so that all Nevada citizens, especially our youth, can meet the basic human need of connecting. NAS and school district leaders stand ready to assist our wonderful state leaders in solving this community and state issue. Thank you for that, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. David Jensen.
Thank you, Superintendent Workman. Chairman Dennis, esteemed members of the committee, for the record, my name is Dr. David Jensen, Superintendent for Humboldt County School District. It's my privilege to speak to you about our third initiative, and that revolves around funding. From the inception of the initial INVEST document created in 2003, Nevada's superintendents have rallied around the cause of transitioning Nevada towards optimal educational funding. In concert with the Finance Commission, of which I have the honor of serving, NAS supports the efforts of the Commission in meeting the charge of Senate Bill 543 of the 2019 legislative session to develop a plan to meet this optimal funding target. In an effort to further this effort, NAS is requesting your support in addressing the funding needs of Nevada students as outlined in the following critical areas. Number one, fund the base at optimal levels for all students while providing additional financial supports for Nevada's most at-risk children. We, along with the Commission, recognize that Nevada cannot reach optimal overnight. As you will hear from both NAS and the Commission, we encourage the legislature to address this need through a three-prong approach. Number one, to restore. If we look at the fiscal year 20 and 21 education budgets, combined they totaled $3.6 billion. The proposed budgets for FY22 and FY23 are proposed at $3.3 billion, or a reduction of approximately $3 million, which is compounded when we consider the impacts of Assembly Bill 3, inflation, enrollment growth, and associated Nevada Department of Ed reductions. This would be a one-time cost to restore, and it is our strongest recommendation to the legislature that that be made as part of the current legislative session. The second step then becomes to reach adequacy. Adequacy is defined as providing sufficient funding for all students to meet state standards and statutory requirements. An APA study put per pupil at FY18 dollars at $9,983, plus fully funded target weights, plus special education increases, plus NDE at adequate level and inflation and enrollment growth. This would come to approximately $1.8 billion annually, or about $2,000 more for each child per year. This would be an annual amount, and we recommend that the legislature work in partnership with the Commission to develop a plan to reach this over the next several biennium. And then the third area, and I know certainly all of our target, is to reach optimal. Optimal is defined as sufficient for strategic investment in practices and resources aligned with Nevada's 5-year strategic plan, that supports all students to exemplary student achievement on par with the nation's best. The Commission is currently evaluating fiscal needs to support this target, and we look forward to bringing that to your attention here shortly. And this would be recommended to be phased in over the next 5 bienniums and beyond. The second area is to increase state spending on public education by creating broad-based new revenue streams to support optimal funding for all students. In order to meet either adequate or optimal funding levels, we recognize that additional revenues will be necessary. NASS supports the work of the Finance Commission in working on this additional funding streams in order to meet the expectations of Senate Bill 543. The Commission will recommend an examination of opportunities within existing taxes through tax reform or restructuring of current tax practices. Key considerations include sufficiency, stability and predictability, competitiveness, and equity. And 2 examples that we are currently evaluating include property tax and sales use tax. And then finally, number 3 is to protect school districts who have lost enrollment due to the COVID-19 pandemic by holding them harmless in FY21 to enable districts to continue vital programs for students. In response to COVID-19, parents from across the state have opted to homeschool students or seek alternative educational methods in order to protect their children. Currently, 15 of the 17 school districts have seen a reduction in enrollment during FY21. Of these 15, 7 report overall reductions in enrollment of 5% or greater. Given current circumstances, the ability to make projections regarding enrollment for fiscal years 22 and 23 are extremely difficult until restrictions are lifted, allowing for a full return of students to school. In order to ensure schools and districts are prepared to meet a potential influx of students when the pandemic comes to an end, maintaining a hold harmless will be essential for our standard operations. Matt, Chair Dennis, with that, we have concluded our presentation, and we would like to open it up to you and the members for any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions from the members on the INVEST plan? Okay, I see Senator Hardy. Go ahead.
I want to make sure I heard right. You're asking for 1.8 billion annually, starting when?
Senator Hardy, Dr. Jensen, for the record, this is a current analysis that's coming from the Commission on School Finance. In order to meet adequacy targets, it would require a commitment of an additional 1.8 billion per year in order to reach that target. Our recommendation is to work towards that over the next several biennium, recognizing that right now is likely not the time to come up with a whole 1.8 billion annually. And again, the Commission is working on this. I want to be careful and respect the work of the Commission as a whole, that I don't get too far ahead of that. We discussed this topic on Thursday and Friday of last week, and it'll be a major discussion point for us in our March Commission meeting. And I would anticipate that we bring recommendations to the Commission shortly thereafter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hardy. Other questions? Let me make sure. I'm going to look in all the spots, the chats, and okay, I don't see anybody. I think it was pretty clear, I guess, the presentation. And so with that, I guess we will go on then. If there's no questions, we will move to the presentation on responses to COVID-19, lessons learned, and reopening plans. And we're going to have Dr. Jesus Jara, Superintendent Clark County, Russell Echt, Superintendent Pershing County, Dr. Kristen McNeil, Superintendent Washoe County School District, and Rebecca Fiden, Executive Director, State Charter School Authority. There's also materials available in your packets for that and on Nellis. So I am, even though I gave it in that order, I don't know who's going to go first. If it's Dr. Jara, please go.
Thank you, Chair Dennis and members of the committee. As I see my PowerPoint coming up, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to share with you our response and our reopening plans for our school district and for our children. So if you can turn to the next slide. Our guiding principles is really opening our schools up and in distance education, ensuring safety and well-being of all our staff and employees, equity and accessibility for learning, provide an instructional model system to meet the needs of all our students, and of course, fostering a relationship and interactions for our students and staff. One of the things that we have moved into from really a crisis closure of our distance education when we closed our schools in March to really planning to open up our campuses in August, which ended up being in distance education. We have exercised really all three models because we do have some rural schools within Clark County School District that are open face-to-face from 5 days to a hybrid, as well as distance education across the entire county. So if you can go to the next slide. This was our response to providing an equitable education and distance education. We purchased immediately using our CARE dollars and Title I money, 135,000 Chromebooks and iPads, distributed in totality 247,000 devices to our children. And really this, I just want to recognize that this was an entire community effort and really highlighting the work with the state superintendent and our governor's task force to really help our children provide a distance education through technology assisted. Again, through hotspots, 18,000 students received internet connectivity with our partners, and as well as also our innovation in providing our buses as Wi-Fi connectivity throughout the community. This is a total effort as a school system to really minimize the equity gap and access within our community. If you go to the next slide. The next slide, our food distribution. Really, this is a phenomenal partnership within our ESCA, our support professionals, our food distribution in 46 different locations at the beginning of 11 million meals. And I want to make sure that it's on the record that this is early in the pandemic, where you see my picture there without a mask. And currently over 290 food service locations throughout Nevada with our partners at Three Squares and other nonprofits to make sure that the 11 million meals in totality have been the great work and dedicated staff in our schools. Next slide. Full-time distance education. We've had some challenges, and please note that this is not an intention, and this is not something because our teachers or our teachers have been doing amazing work and really signifying and providing an equitable opportunity for our children. But the academics is one of our biggest concerns, and this is why we have really tried to work hard to bring our children back into our schools. So we provided and are providing intermediate academic support, and then again long-term systems and structures improvement. Our social emotional has been a challenge as we have looked at the needs of not only of our children, but also of our staff, and really addressing the social emotional needs for all students. And working with Department of Education, we have partnered and really bringing in a universal screener for all students across the board. All our campuses have multidisciplinary leadership teams to really address the needs, looking at data and to address the needs of our students. The next slide. When you look at also improving, we know that has been a challenge as the 5th largest district in the country. Really flipping this district upside down has been a challenge. But again, our educators, our 42,000 employees have done an amazing job. We have looked at providing and improving our Canvas professional learning, live webinar sessions, content area, distance education, academic units. Our partners have come in, Achieve 3000 and others, really looking at providing an opportunity for us to provide resources across the board using our federal money. Again, professional learning has been instrumental in the work that we're doing. We are now in the process of creating champions of Canvas champions, because this work is not only now, but when we come to a face-to-face not only in March, but as we continue to catch up our children is something that we have to do. Something that's not noted in there, Vegas BVS has been instrumental in just a matter of 3 weeks, over 5 million contacts within our Vegas BVS. So we're really proud of the work that we have done there. And again, the professional development is ongoing as we continue to deliver the distance education for our children. If you go to the next slide. So now we're moving from full distance education. We are also, our school board of trustees also partnered and approved a voluntary small group academic plan where individual schools will be able to provide small group support, whether it's academics, whether it's seniors graduations, whether it's credit recovery, whether it's academic and attendance support, individual plans. What we will be sending and we have sent to our school principals is really the implementation plan, following our social distancing guidelines, but then also creating for the individual needs of their students. And really proud of the work that we have done with not only our teachers union, our support professionals, CCEA, ESCA, CASAPI, to really provide a hybrid instructional model for pre-K through 3 that will be beginning March 1 for all our schools. So really proud of the work that everybody in our bargaining units have come together to help us open up our campuses for our children. If you go to the next slide. The next slide, obviously can't compliment enough the governor's office, the state superintendent, the emergency management at the state level, but then also locally. We are in partnerships to really provide the vaccination. I know the governor has made that a priority, so really appreciate the collaboration. I'll just tell you that as of last Sunday, we have vaccinated close to 9,100 of our employees. Again, great work in this entire community, helping our staff get back to a face-to-face instruction. If you go to the next slide. So here's the hybrid model, and we're releasing data. Students will select, again, parent choice is not mandated. It's again, a parent that's sending and identifying their kids. Cohort A and B will be face-to-face. That means Wednesday through Friday. It will be distance education and vice versa. Parents will also have the choice to make sure that their children can stay home if they wish. Again, this is great collaboration and really proud of our work here, because we know that there's going to be some kids that have and are willing to do that and want to stay there. So really providing the choice for our families and our community. The next slide. Now I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair, so we can move on to the next one, and then I stand ready to answer any questions. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Well, we're going to do the questions at the tail end.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair Dennis, honorable members of the committee. For the record, Kristen McNeil, Superintendent of the Washoe County School District, and I have Lindsay Anderson with me today who will help me with the slides, so thank you very much, Lindsay. So if you don't mind forwarding the slide. So back in July, as soon as schools went into closure in March, our team started getting together with our teachers and our principals and really putting together guiding principles that we would be using to structure the opening of our schools when we open back up in August. And so these 5 points around our guiding principles really guide every single decision that we have made to date around our 3 separate models. Obviously, do no harm. And we talk about do no harm when we talk about attendance or grading or any different types of discipline issues that may come up in our schools. And then obviously ensuring that our students, our families, and their basic needs are met. And I'll go a little bit more into detail later in the presentation around food security, equitable access for all of our students as far as devices and connectivity. Obviously, with the school district, we always want to maintain high academic standards, and then following all federal, state, and local guidelines. In the Washoe County School District, we've been able to put together 3 separate models. And if you want to look at this in a way that we do, it's almost 3 separate school districts running simultaneously throughout our district. So we have all of our elementary schools in person 5 days a week. And with that, we also have our vulnerable populations for English language learners, special education, gifted and talented, as well as our children in transition and foster children. All of those populations are able to attend school 5 days a week, whether you're in elementary, middle, or high school.
Excuse me, Dr. McNeil?
Yes.
I'm so terribly sorry to interrupt you. This is Kim with Broadcast. We are not able to see your screen share. I'm going to turn that off. And Lindsay, if you could turn that back on again, we'll give that a whirl.
See if that works.
I know we tested this. I'm sorry.
No worries.
And stand by. Let me make sure that the camera can see it.
It looks like the committee was able to see it.
I was going to say, this is Chair Dennis. We were able to see it, if that's helpful as you troubleshoot this.
Yes, sir. It's important for broadcast to be able to see it too, so that the public can view it. But we are good to go now. Please continue, Dr. McNeil, and I apologize again for the interruption.
No worries at all. So for our hybrid schedule, that's in our middle and our high schools, and it's where students will attend either 2 or 3 days every other week. And then during that time of December 9th through January 18th, because of a lack of resources, we actually moved our middle and our high schools to full distance learning. However, with the support of Joan Ebert, the State Superintendent, Nevada Department of Education, as well as the Washoe County Health District and Washoe County, we were able to provide resources around contact tracing, as well as the emergency certification for guest teachers. And I'll go a little bit more into that. So right now within the Washoe County School District, we have an in-person model, a hybrid model, and then we also put into place a full distance learning model for our families. And so we have that also running in conjunction with all of our schools at this point in time. If you can advance the slide. And then importantly, whenever we're going to be talking about the safety of our students and our staff, the mitigation efforts that have been put into place within our school district work around a self-screener. So everyone self-screens, whether you are an employee or a student, they self-screen before they either go to work or go to school. Additional cleaning efforts, looking at ventilation, our HVAC systems across the district were looked at. We have increased the circulation of our air systems. Physically, the distance, social distancing. So right now, currently in elementary, we have 3 feet social distancing requirements. And then in our middle and our high schools, we have 6 feet social distancing. And then importantly, every single person that walks onto a district property, whether that is in a school or in a office building, must wear a face coverings. And I will tell you, there was a great amount of trepidation from our staff, because before our students returned, we didn't know how students were going to react to this. But I am so proud of our students. We have had almost 99.9% compliance. And where there was a lack of compliance, it was that we needed to provide the face coverings for those students. So our students have just really stepped up, because they understand that it's not only safety for them, it's safety for others, and it's safety for their families as far as wearing face coverings. And then obviously hand cleaning. So Dr. Jara mentioned nutrition services, and I cannot thank our nutrition services team. They have just been heroes within our school district when we talk about food security. All of our students right now within our school district receive free meals. We also, during distance learning, partnered with the Northern Nevada Food Bank, who is a critical partner. But as you can see, all meals are served free of charge. We also have, with our hybrid models, meal to go kits. And so our nutrition services staff has put together kits where the student, if they are not attending in person on one day, they actually receive a meal kit for the very next day. To this time, over 2.9 million meals served year to date. But I cannot emphasize enough the critical nature of our nutrition services team. And then just as importantly, the digital divide. To date, we have distributed over 17,276 devices to our students and our families. We've purchased 3,000 hotspots with our ESSERS funding, as well as received additional hotspots from the T-Mobile settlement. Again, just a huge shout out to our nonprofits, the Reno Lions, City of Reno, and importantly, the Education Alliance, who has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to put devices into the hands of our students. So going forward, just this past Saturday, we finished up almost, we only have about 350 more employees. We will have sent out over 9,000 invitations for our employees to receive their first vaccination. By mid-March, we should have received all of our second doses for all of our employees. And this was a tremendous effort from our fire departments, Washoe County Health District, the governor's office, Nevada Department of Education. Everyone just stepped up to the plate. They understand that this is dependent upon vaccination supply, but I am just tremendously proud of where Washoe County School District is in relation to vaccine rollout. Obviously, testing and contact tracing, as well as guest teachers, those were the three areas of additional resources that we really needed to have for our middle and our high schoolers to come back. Because of the emergency waiver provided by the Nevada Department of Education, we were able to have over 216 applications for new guest teachers coming into our school district and helping out. We have several different types of testing available, the antigen testing as well as PCR testing. And then through the good work of Washoe County, we're able to use some county employees to help us with contact tracing efforts in our elementary and our secondary schools. We will continue to use our CARES funding going into 21-22 school year to support academic recovery and the mental health needs of our students and staff. And we just had a work session with our Board of Trustees a couple of weeks ago to talk about a new strategic plan built in a 2-year segment developed exclusively around response and recovery for the Washoe County School District. And with that, open to any questions.
Okay, we're going to hold questions till the end. So if we'll go to the next presentation.
All right, thank you. I do not have a screen to share, so Chair Dennis and members of the committee, thank you for allowing us to speak with you today. I am Russell Fecht, Superintendent of Pershing County School District and the current NAS President. I get the honor to represent our rural districts, which we know are a very diverse group. However, we do share numerous similarities in our responses to the COVID-19 situation, and many of those same experiences we share with our 2 larger districts. If this virus has taught us anything at all, it is that it does not care who you are or where you are. It impacts us all in many of the same ways. Our rural districts have varied in different learning models, just like our large counterparts. We have had some districts in 100% distance learning, while others have been fortunate enough to have 100% of their schools offer in-person instruction, and we've had others that have had to make the choice to face a hybrid approach. We have had classrooms, schools, and districts have to switch back and forth depending on their local COVID-19 situation, all in an effort to find the balance or try to find the balance between student staff safety and meeting the educational needs of all of our students. Our rural districts must comply with all the same state mitigation efforts such as mask wearing and social distancing. And we also have implemented many of the other safeguards that you've already heard about in the previous 2 presentations, including but not limited to the personal hygiene campaigns, the extra cleaning and disinfecting, increased ventilation, and daily health screenings. A few items that our rural districts have pointed out that become points of emphasis for us is those that are in full-time learning models haven't seen an increase in COVID-19 due to spread in school situations, and we didn't receive pushback amongst our students or our staff or our parents when we asked them to put a mask on and social distance to come to school. We have experienced across the board a drop in enrollment due to our homeschooling applications from parents that have chosen to take on homeschooling and the responsibility of educating their children instead of sending their children to our schools or participating in our distance learning programs, many of which have chosen that route because of either an anti-mask political stance and or the belief that we'll never have an environment safe enough for their children. Transportation restrictions that everybody is under continues to be one of the major hurdles for all of us, and in some cases has been the sole reason that a district has had to choose a hybrid or full distance learning, just from the lack of being able to get their students on a school bus to school. It's interesting to note that that is one of the major hurdles, yet we do not have a case of active spread on a school bus with increased ventilation and mask wearing taking place. It's been particularly difficult in the rural setting given the vast distances that we transport our students. For example, here in Pershing County, I have one route that comes in from 65 miles out. That's one way. This same remoteness has caused significant challenges in providing connectivity for those who either choose or must choose to be in a distance learning situation. We have many of our rural locations that simply do not have an internet connection, much less cell service that they can tap into with a T-Mobile hotspot or a Verizon jetpack or whatever the current terminology is that they want to throw behind it. Many of our rural communities have some of the oldest school facilities in the state. They were built at a time when classrooms and classroom space wasn't really thought of. It was a matter of having to put 15 to 20 kids in a room, not thinking about 25 to 30 like many of our larger counterparts have had to, and then have to think about utilizing that space for social distancing. Infrastructure in these buildings also are very antiquated, so increasing ventilation and systems such as that isn't an overnight fix. Getting internet connectivity throughout the school in the needs of Wi-Fi and increased units for one-to-one initiatives and distance learning, it's very, very challenging and expensive. The last point that I'd leave you before we open up to questions, which I'm sure we'll have, is that we keep in mind that recovery of the learning loss was an ask of this committee as well as the Assembly and as well as our counterparts that we face to in the public. Our students are experiencing learning loss due to COVID-19 and the crisis we all face. Making this up isn't going to take place over a matter of a year. It's not going to take place over a matter of 2 years. It's going to be a long road to recovery, and it can't be done with less resources. If anything, it's going to take more to be able to handle that lift. We appreciate your time and efforts that you must face. We look forward to working with you as a group as we navigate these extreme challenges that we face. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Dennis. Thank you for the opportunity. Rebecca Feigen, Executive Director of the State Public Charter School Authority, for the record. I am going to go ahead and do my best to share my screen here. And while that comes up, we'll go ahead and get started. So before I get into discussing charter schools and their response to COVID-19, since this is the first time that I'm presenting to this committee, I do want to briefly provide some context about charter schools and the State Public Charter School Authority. I know many of you are familiar with us, and for some of you, you may be a little less familiar. So charter schools are tuition free. They're open to all students and enroll students through a lottery. They are required to take all state assessments. They are governed by volunteer boards of directors and may not operate for profit. And they are subject to a performance contract with a charter school sponsor, such as the State Public Charter School Authority. The State Public Charter School Authority was created in 2011 to serve three primary purposes. First, to authorize charter schools of high quality. Second, to provide oversight to the schools we sponsor. And third, to serve as a model of best practices for charter school sponsoring. And I won't go through these, but some brief statistics about our agency. And for context, I do want to provide some statistics about our schools. I would note that we have 67 charter school campuses located in 5 counties, and we serve approximately 11% of the state's total student enrollment. And so now to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 response. Throughout the 2020-2021 school year, the State Public Charter School Authority has provided guardrails and oversight regarding in-person learning. Ultimately, schools were able to make decisions, and schools being their boards and their school leadership, about the instructional models that they would execute. But they had to do so within the guardrails that we set forth. And we did see a wide range of approaches, which I'll describe on the next slide. As you can see in the top half of this screen, back in August, the authority put in place COVID-19 in-person learning guidance that limited in-person instruction to 25% of a school's enrollment if they were in a county that was flagged by the COVID-19 task force. Most of our schools in those flagged counties opened either fully virtual or with very limited in-person instruction. But getting into September and October, some started to bring specific groups of students back in and gradually increased the number of students learning in person. And this allowed them to refine their cleaning protocols, to adapt to this hybrid learning environment, and let students adapt as well. And so in early November, after monitoring our schools, monitoring the cases and test positivity throughout the state, throughout the early fall, and then talking with our school administrators and board chairs, we increased that limit from the initial 25% to 40%. I want to make sure we keep in mind that during this time, our schools were subject to all of the emergency directives that were in place, just like any other district school. And there were some exemptions granted to schools that could demonstrate both a need for higher rates of in-person learning and strong safety measures. Our board's next meeting is at the end of February, and we are closely watching the case rates, test positivity, also talking to our schools, working on vaccine rollout. And so all of these pieces will continue to inform our work, and we are keeping all of this in mind as we contemplate potential changes going into the springtime. So in terms of oversight, on the bottom half of this slide, the State Public Charter School Authority reviewed all of the schools' reopening plans for compliance with the Nevada Department of Education guidance. We also have significantly increased communication to ensure that we are well informed of what's happening on the ground every day at our schools, and to ensure that schools have access to critical information that they may need and get answers to questions that they may have. Early on, the communication was multiple times per week. And as we've gotten used to things, figured out some of these protocols and figured out how to implement them, we've scaled back a little bit. And so do maintain weekly communication with our schools, school leaders, specifically on COVID. In terms of methods of instruction, this slide shows the data as of January 18th, 2020. I'm sorry, January 18th, 2021. That is a reflection of the fact that it is early in the year. The vast majority of our schools are in a hybrid model, and many schools are continuing to increase in-person learning to safely bring more students back into their school buildings. In terms of supporting our students and families, to provide some detail, first I'll talk about safe reopening. The first piece is that we have become deeply familiar, as have our schools, with the federal, state, and local guidance, and we have leaned heavily on our local health officials to help make sure our schools are well equipped to implement that guidance. In fact, those health officials have joined several of our calls with schools to share information, answer questions, discuss scenarios, and make sure that schools are prepared. Second, as I mentioned, we've worked in close coordination with those health authorities, and that has included in the development of the school-based response plans, which both of those, the large health districts have published. And the third piece here is continuing to make sure that our schools have access to appropriate PPE in coordination with the task force and Department of Emergency Management. With regard to learning loss, we know this is a real concern as we think about short and long-term impacts of the pandemic. Last summer, we were anticipating, even early on, the need for this. And so we leveraged some federal funds to provide access to a 3-part training on instructional recovery. So even at that point, we were beginning to think about this need. We are, obviously, our schools are continuing to use local assessments in order to identify how students are doing, what they're learning, where there may be gaps. And we're also gearing up for the state assessments, which we believe will provide a broader and longer term view of the overall impact and potential learning loss. Finally, with regard to student outreach, our schools have had a very high rate of success in reaching students. Even back into the spring of 2020, when things were just rolling out, we saw relatively high attendance and contact despite some of those challenges of the early transition. In terms of addressing attendance issues, and chronic absenteeism, our schools have really focused on addressing root causes. This includes leaning on social workers, conducting appropriately distanced home visits to check in on students and families, and supporting with access to internet and devices. With regard to internet and devices, we have been able to work with schools and our partners, such as the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology and Cox Communications, to help to get devices and internet into the hands of our students. In terms of funding, at this point, the State Public Charter School Authority has seen an additional approximately $9.3 million in federal funds. And the major uses, I think, are pretty similar to those that we saw in our district counterparts: technology, staffing, instructional materials, and health and cleaning, as well as wraparound services. In terms of budgetary impacts, the State Public Charter School Authority reviews budget to actual reports for our schools on a quarterly basis, and we have seen mixed results on this front and no major trends to report at this point, but we'll continue to monitor those. We have seen some schools with noticeably lower than projected enrollment for this current school year. Finally, this provides just a quick summary of some of the supports that we have provided to our schools during this time. The State Public Charter School Authority has a limited staff, but we have really adjusted and flexed our capacity to provide as much support as we can during this challenge. And so with that, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Let me get the full view here. All right, so we've had the 4 presentations. Hopefully you've been writing down your questions and are ready to ask some questions. I'm going to start, and because I want to know from all of them, so if you could be quick when you answer, and just do it in the order. If you could just answer in the order that you just presented, and in some cases it may or may not, it may not matter. But I know in Clark, especially with Clark, as you're switching to this hybrid model, one of the things you sent out a survey to parents to want to see which ones want to come back and which ones. What kind of ratios are you seeing that want to come back versus want to stay home and that kind of thing, and then have the other kind of have that discussion with the other districts also.
Chairman Dennis, Superintendent Jar, for the record, I'm glad you asked that question. I just reviewed a little bit of the data. It's in the 59%. Don't quote me. It's 59 to 60%. Of our students that want to come back in pre-K 3. Right. And how about in some of the others? Some of you are already back in person, but did you do? I mean, are you seeing? I noticed several of you made presentations concerning options to do the full time. So, I wonder how many are taking that option versus.
No, thank you very much, Chair Dennis, Superintendent McNeil, for the record. And so it has really depended, in Washoe County at least, it's depended on where we are within the school year. The majority of our families, when we sent out the survey, they wanted to have that availability of options, including the full distance learning. And so we've released survey data, which we can provide to this committee as well too. But the majority of our families going into this second semester are either in the hybrid or the in-person model.
Thank you. How about the other two?
Chair Dennis, Superintendent Fact for the record. And in this question, I can speak for a few of us, but not all the rurals, because I don't know of everybody's. What I will say is that I do know that of the rural districts, we have less than 5% that are participating in distance learning. We all offer the different versions, whether we're hybrid or in person, but for instance, I'll speak in depth. Pershing County's been in with 100% in-person instruction since day one. We were fortunate enough to be able to spread out and meet those requirements. We did provide the option for a distance learning participation, and we had roughly 3% that identified that they would like the distance learning. And within the first few weeks of school, we fell by under 2% of our population. And now at semester, we're down to around 1% that are in distance learning. And I know a number of our other districts are in the same pattern that they've seen. So across the board.
Thank you.
Rebecca Fiden for the record. We have a wide array at our schools, and some of it is based on geography as well. We have everything from one of our rural schools out in Ely, where I believe 100% of students are participating in hybrid learning in some form, to some schools, particularly in Clark County. We have had some schools that have a very low percent of families interested, in the range of 20 to 40%. And so again, it's a pretty wide range, and a reflection, I think, of some of the local differences that we may be experiencing.
Thank you. Okay, what other questions do committee members have? Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions. Two actually is all I have. One, when the policy came out, I'm interested in student attendance, first of all, and if you could answer for your districts, that'd be great. I know that I've heard that some folks are saying that when students are logging on, when they're on distance education, that the only way that they are counted is if they are in front of a camera, and some of them are not. Can you describe to me your policy as far as attendance? Do students need to be in front of the camera and present in front of the teacher during the class, or do they not? And then I'll follow up with another question if I could, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Superintendent.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Senator Hammond. Superintendent Jar for the record, and I know my deputy superintendent is also here. Can probably get more into details. But we do obviously require part of the attendance to get our students engaged in the classroom. I'm going to tell you that the data is not promising right now. It's a little bit, our absentee rate is a little bit higher than the past. I think what's happening is obviously the engagement in distance education has been problematic, especially for some of our older kids that are working to help families with the economy. But no excuse. One of the things that we do have in place is where our teachers have up to, I believe is close to 7 days where they can go back in and adjust it if the children submit homework as part of some of that asynchronous instruction. So, but Dr. Larson Mitchell is available to respond if she needs to clarify something further.
Yeah, if you could, Superintendent, just is there a requirement that the students have their cameras on so that the teacher can see that they are there and seated and engaged?
No, as a matter of fact, Senator Hammond, Superintendent Jar, for the record, we're not requiring cameras to be on because of obviously, some of our kids don't want to turn their cameras on. You do see their phone numbers up on the screen, and as a matter of fact, I had an opportunity. I substituted a class right before the holiday season, and it's you do see all their phone numbers. Some kids do turn on their cameras, but that's also if the kids are willing to and wanting to do that.
Anybody else want to respond to that?
Thank you very much, Senator. Kristen McNeil, Superintendent Washoe County, for the record. So attendance has been a large issue, and this is a national issue. Chronic absenteeism is a significant issue across the country. For Washoe County School District, we do not require cameras on, but what we do require is a touch point. So whether I am on the phone, whether I am on a device, because some of our students may not be able to, because of connectivity, they may not be able to access at that point in time. And so we've been trying to be as flexible as possible around what constitute as far as engagement with our students. But I will tell you, our chronic absenteeism rate has increased. We're going to be making a presentation to our board in the late February board meeting around chronic absenteeism, because it is a significant issue.
Thank you.
Senator Hammond, Superintendent Fecht, for the record. I can't speak for every district, rural district, but we do not require cameras be on all the time. At the request of a teacher, should we believe that we need to verify that that student is there and actively engaged, we may ask them to turn it on. If they're unable to, a phone call or an email or something for correspondence. But like Dr. McNeil said, we've tried to be as flexible as we possibly can. We're trying to justify participation and attendance in schools.
Rebecca Fiden, Executive Director of the State Public Charter School, for the record. Senator Hammond, we do know many schools are encouraging students to participate via camera. It does allow for better monitoring and engagement. However, we have conveyed to schools that they should not be requiring it, as one, it can cause bandwidth issues that could halt the class, but second, that there may be reasons, personal reasons, that a student's family may not want the camera on in the classroom.
Thank you very much for the answers. The second part of my inquiry is regarding plans to reopen. I know that a lot of folks are you guys are looking at plans being submitted for hybrid in some cases. I just wanted to know, when you look at these plans, they're submitted to reopen and there's a hybrid involved. When you're determining the level of, I think, not necessarily attendance, it's how much instruction time does a teacher now have with a student. And in some cases, I was looking at some plans for a hybrid, and in some cases where right now, if you are online, you're teaching remotely, you're in front of the student for 4 days, and with the hybrid, you're going to be in front of them only 2 days. You get, I guess, less time worth of instruction. Are you aware in trying to make sure you're keeping the same level of instruction days so that the students get as much as possible, even though I know there's going to be less instruction time in the end?
Superintendent Jara, for the record. Senator Hammond, one of the things that we're looking, and really this is where I appreciate the partnership with all our bargaining units, not only CCA, ESCA, and CASAPI, to really look at what's best for kids. We're looking at the data. It's not, obviously the academic loss is a huge concern, but we got to look at the health data and the mental health crisis that we're dealing with for our children. So we are looking at, as a matter of fact, we're finalizing a couple other things to make sure that our kids are in front of our educators for 6 hours and 11 minutes a day. The asynchronous instruction we'll look at potentially, and also on the distance ed days where the kids are going to be home up and providing that opportunity. So it'll be that face-to-face instruction, which is so critical, and we're learning from my colleagues in the north and my colleagues in the rural community. So maybe per day in time may be a little different, but I believe that bringing our kids to face-to-face in front of our adults is also critical.
Senator Hammond, Kristen McNeil, for the record, for Washoe County. So for us, the important factor is when we're talking about engagement in the hybrid model, we had to have clear expectations for our students, but then also for our staff as well too. And so that similar to Clark County, we instituted making sure that there was a clear 6 hour or 6.5 hour, depending if you're elementary or secondary, if you're on full distance, for those periods of time. And then obviously on their off day, the asynchronous learning and the ability to check in at least one time per day for all of our students. I will tell you that the hybrid model, out of all the models, even though distance learning has been extremely challenging, the hybrid model, because of all of the logistical factors, is probably one of the toughest models to implement and to implement really well.
Again, Superintendent Fact for the record. Hybrid is, as Dr. McNeil said, I think we do everything we can to try and avoid being in a situation with a hybrid because of those challenges. I think within your plans, exactly what my two counterparts said, you're having to work to the best of your ability, given your situation, to ensure that we're engaging those children and using the benefits of seeing each other face to face and providing that in-depth face-to-face instruction outweighs the fact that you may not have that engagement for quite the same period of time that you may on a full distance learning model or something along those lines. Again, extremely challenging. Hybrid model is very difficult.
Rebecca Feynman for the record. Senator Hammond, I think you've heard from everyone how challenging the hybrid is, and we've heard it too. I will say that we've seen a lot of schools have to adapt. Early on, we saw some folks doing hybrid where they were scheduling out every kid's full day, even on their virtual days, and that was causing a lot of tension at home and at school because they were having to manage both sides of the equation, both the kids in the building and the kids that were learning virtually, and needing staff capacity to actually provide the support to those kids that were learning remotely. And so because of that complexity, have had to adapt and adjust to make sure that both teachers have enough time and also that it's working for kids. In fact, I had at least one call this fall from a parent who said, my kid is in front of a screen all day, 2 days a week. Like this can't be healthy. And part of the conversation with some of our schools too is figuring out how best to support the needs of their kids. And it certainly looks different than it would in a typical classroom because of just the complexity of running a hybrid model.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think I got the answers I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Donate, welcome to the committee. I meant to do that earlier. I was going to do that at the end, but this is your first committee meeting, and I want to give you I understand you have a question. I want to give you that opportunity to ask that question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here today and presenting in front of us. I'm very glad that we are having this conversation. I'm a recent grad and I have a public health background, so I have a few questions if you can just take the time to answer them. My main worry with the reopening strategy isn't really with not just in terms of transmission between student to student, but it's actually on students to their families, their caregivers, their grandparents. And as educators, you guys have the direct connection to the community and to their parents themselves. What strategy has your institution have on educating non-English Spanish speaking or non-English speaking communities and protecting marginalized families? So have you had conversations about educating Black and Latinx family members that might not have the right education on health literacy or how to improve health literacy across all grade levels? So I'm interested in hearing that conversation.
So, Chair Dennis, Superintendent Jar for the record, Senator Donati, welcome. And again, we are actually partnering, as I mentioned in the presentation, with the Southern Nevada Health District. Locally here, actually, in our presentation, we shared our plan with the state this past week to look at where we are. Obviously, and they appreciated and support, obviously, our plan. Thought it was a sound plan. One of the things that we are now as we're rolling out the implementation, obviously in different languages, and helping the individual schools and working with them to support our families in specific zip codes. And that's part of the conversation we're having locally with the Southern Nevada Health District, because we're looking at our zip codes. As we look at our mitigating strategies as well, and again, learning from my colleagues that have been open, learning quite a bit from Washoe that has been open on the hybrid model, in our testing protocol. We do our COVID testing, not only for our adults, and then part of the things that we're also educating in our vaccines as well for the adults. Can't mandate it, but we are spreading out and sharing some of that language, and again, partnering with the Southern Nevada Health District to do that.
Senator Donante, Kristen McNeil, for the record, for Washoe County School District. So similarly, here in Washoe, we've partnered very closely with the Washoe County Health District as far as outreach efforts, but then also the faith-based community. We've had several opportunities to partner with them around testing. And then obviously Immunize Nevada has been a huge partner on outreach efforts. And I can't stress that enough for our communities of color and our marginalized communities, getting that word out, but utilizing every avenue that we possibly can to get that word out. And that even goes back to the early time as far as mitigating efforts, as far as face coverings and social distancing, group gatherings, hand washing, and just really talking over and over and over again. We also have a family newsletter that's sent out in English and Spanish that has a lot of links and website resources to our families as well too.
Superintendent Beck, for the record, to reiterate what my two counterparts have said. I know here within Pershing, we really focused on the effort of educating folks about what proper hygiene and the mask wearing, PPE, those things really have focused within that with all of our personnel. But the family campaign of understanding, if we're going to be successful on getting our kids in school and continuing to be able to get them in school, we needed a community-wide effort. It couldn't just be the school doing this. It took a community, and we really put a campaign and a belief out there is we're only as healthy as our community. And if our community could stay healthy, then we were able to stay in. And what we started to really focus in on was those hand washings and being social distancing, all the different things that the CDC had sent out in the different languages. We were able to get out as well and utilize those resources because we don't have quite the resources some of our large counterparts had. And so that's really where our mitigation efforts went.
Rebecca Fiden, for the record. As the Charter Authority, we're a little bit removed from direct family communication, but we have made sure that our schools are, when they have large populations of non-English speakers, making sure that information is translated. And we have been monitoring the communications of our schools, asking them to basically copy us on all family communications regarding COVID-19. In addition, as Superintendent Fecht mentioned, we too have spread the resources that we've been able to find, like the CDC's flyers that are in multiple languages, and made sure that our schools have access to some of those public resources to spread the word as well.
Thank you, Senator Donato. Did you have another question, or?
I do have one follow-up question, if that's fine. My follow-up question to all of you is regarding everything, now that we are starting to transition back to reopening, have you encountered any issues with mandatory testing? I know that a few teachers have raised the question of the ACT testing date conflicting with their vaccine schedules. Is that something that you have encountered within your own districts? Or is what does the future of testing look like for the rest of the school year?
Superintendent Jar, for the record, some of the testing that's mandatory, obviously, from the school system, of course, we have to operate on on what's mandated according to the federal government. And I know that those are conversations we're having, and we are partnering with our bargaining unit to make sure that we have enough staff to really administer the assessments that are, for example, the ACT is a graduation requirement, that we provide that opportunity for our students. So we are working with our bargaining unit to make sure that we have enough staff to proctor all the assessments that are necessary.
Senator Delonte, Kristen McNeil, for the record, Washoe County School District. So for us, that was one of the unique factors that we had to talk about with the Washoe County Health District, and that, we're a unique employer. And so the more that we were able to offer the vaccines after hours, usually typically around 3:30 to 6 p.m., and then also on the weekends. So they were able to stand up our points of distribution, or pods, within our high schools on Saturdays, and then also after hours. As far as additional testing mandates, I know that we've had conversations with the state superintendent, and he absolutely is understanding around those efforts as well too.
Great, thank you. That answers my question. There.
Anybody else want to give responses? Or Biden?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record, just would add on that we have heard a couple concerns from schools about the logistics, but again, because they're a federal requirement, we've said kind of from the beginning of the year, be prepared for these. Things could change last minute, but better be ready rather than have to adjust last minute. So by and large, we expect our schools should be prepared to implement those federally mandated state assessments.
Thank you. We're going to go to Senator Dondero Loop. I know we've got to finish our meeting here quick, so whatever responses you have, try to give it as quick as you can. And then if there's any additional information, you can always just get it to our staff person, Jen Sturm, and she can get us the responses. So Vice Chair Dondero Loop.
Thank you, and I apologize. I'm the person that has to chair a meeting at 3:30, so I will need to drop off, but I thought it was important to get these questions on the record. I noticed in Washoe County School District's presentation, you talked about your CARES Act funding going to be used for academic recovery and mental health in 21-22. And so I'd like to know, and I'm way fine with you all taking this offline and answering me, but if you would let me know what you've done with your CARES Act money. I see on CCSD, you've put Achieve 3000 speaker series, distance learning resources. What are those? So I'd like to know that. I'd like to know what you're doing for mental health and how we're placing counselors and how we'll be helping those. And last, the big question is, what is your plan, or do you have one as of yet moving forward? So if you'd like, you can answer all those offline to me. If other people want to hear those answers, you can go ahead, and when I need to drop off, I will just drop off. So thank you very much.
One thing that we can do is they could just provide a report that has that, because I'm sure probably all of us would like to have that, and that'll save time right now so we can make sure to get you to your committee.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, sir.
So, all right. So did you guys get any questions or clarifying that you need in order to provide that information?
We'll send that information from Clark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe we had Senator Lang had a question.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. I'm curious. I know early on in the pandemic, the lower income parts of the districts were disproportionately affected, not having the supplies they needed to do distance education. I know that we were able to get internet, and we were very creative in doing that, and also getting the technology they needed. I'm just curious, have you still seeing a large drop off in those neighborhoods? And do you anticipate, and how are you working to get those kids back to school? And if I can just ask a second question, so in the interest of time, I read an article recently about how far our kids are going to be behind educationally because of the pandemic. And so I think this kind of goes with Vice Chair Dondero's question is what are the school districts doing so that we can bring our kids up to grade level by next year? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Superintendent Jar for the record. Great question, and I'll be brief. We have seen the attendance numbers that we've looked at, and we're now dissecting it by individual schools and providing some central support to our principals to make sure that we keep them engaged. That's number one. And then the second part of the question, I believe, around the academic loss, huge concern, and really looking at the federal dollars that are coming down up in this next stimulus money to be able to extend the year, provide opportunities, because we have not only that as a priority, but also the mental health concern that is also going to be ongoing when our children return to school.
Senator Lang, Kristen McNeil for Washoe County for the record. So for Washoe, very similar. And then importantly, we know that it's going to take, and I believe Superintendent Fecht mentioned this, it's going to take more than 1 year. We know that academic loss and academic recovery is going to take quite a bit of time, but our emphasis is going to be around the mental health supports for our students as well as for our staff, and having that as our top priority as all of our students come back into a full in-person model, crossing our fingers for the 21-22.
Superintendent Fecht, do you have any?
Nothing else to add.
Okay. About Biden.
Rebecca Fiden for the record. I think we've seen pretty good success in making sure to track down those students that had been harder to reach early on. And we're really grateful for the support from the governor's office through hotspots, through their assistance in identifying suppliers that had Chromebooks that we could get, our schools could get their hands on quickly. And then also through our partnership with Cox Communications, we've been able to really connect everyone and help to keep those students and families connected. And in terms of instructional recovery, I think that's really a priority. We know a lot of our schools' initial CARES Act funding went to buying technology, and then secondary was some professional learning around virtual learning. For example, we have a course going on right now for a number of charter schools related to the distance learning playbook, which is a relatively new book that came out of the pandemic that is really around instructional strategies for virtual learning. And so I think the next phase is really thinking about how to continue to push to build those instructional recovery plans and make sure that effectively kids are going to have to pick up the pace on their learning. And we expect a lot of the future CARES Act funding will actually go to that professional learning and support and potentially additional staffing, such as interventionist tutors who may be able to support with that type of need for our students and the school community.
Thank you. We're not going to go to Senator Hardy. I didn't forget about you, everybody else. Everybody had questions this time. You just happened to be at the tail end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested in two things, the direct effect and the indirect effect of the COVID-19. So for instance, how many cases have we seen in the schools, elementary, middle, and high school, of positive tests and the causes of the non-attendance if they were exposed, so that they became an online substitute, as it were, and how we measure the indirect effects of mental health, suicides, how we measure those, and are we looking at a percentage of positivities? Are we looking at a number in order to say, okay, let's reopen? I heard the comment about we haven't seen anything in our rurals, for instance, that were attributed to the buses. So what is it that we have? Do we have numbers? And if we have numbers, do we have numbers that are going to be used as the yardstick to say, okay, let's reopen the schools? And you may or may not have that, but I'm interested in it. Appreciate it.
And before you go, give the quick answer. If it's a longer answer is needed, if you could get that to us, we'll make sure that everybody gets it. I want to make sure, because I've got half of the committee, I think, has to be at this 3:30. I'm willing to stay for the public comment and whatever we need to, but so if you'll be quick on those.
Superintendent Jar, for the record, we can get those numbers. I know we have them on our website. Senator Hardy, we're using COVID. We don't have a positivity to be able to open schools. That's something that our local chief health officer has looked at because of the concern that we've had with the mental health crisis and we've had with our academic loss. So, but we'll get the numbers that you requested, Senator.
Senator Kristen McNeil for the record. So for the Washoe County School District, we have those numbers available on our website as well. And then as a standing agenda item for every single board of trustee meeting, there is a COVID meter tracking, which the board then decides if they're going to be moving to a separate model or not. So the board makes that decision, and it's on every single board agenda.
Superintendent Fact for the record, Senator Hardy. I can speak directly for Pershing County, as we've been one of the counties that has been fortunate enough to be in person the entire time. It hasn't been until recently, within the last month, that our community has really truly been impacted by COVID-19. Within the contact tracing, up until just a week or so ago, we had yet to have a case that was linked to spread within our schools. 2 weeks ago, we finally had our first case that we could we couldn't rule out any other way that they would have contracted it besides potentially within one of our schools. So that would be the one and only case that I have that I feel comfortable that contact tracing didn't tie to a home environment. And we have not experienced spread. That case did not come from spread on a school bus. And to my knowledge, our other districts that are providing transportation, they have not seen that significant increase, whether in-person learning or that, and those numbers will prove that point.
Rebecca Fenn, for the record, we're happy to provide you with the numbers as well. Our schools, I believe, have seen very few cases that they believe have been caused by transmission on campus, but we can point to a couple where a couple of staff members had been identified as potential as COVID positive, and so potentially those were on site, and so we can certainly provide you with those numbers.
Great, thank you very much, and I want to thank everybody. We probably have a million more questions that we could probably ask. This has been, obviously on our minds over this past year as we've dealt with education and with our families and with others. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I know it's not something that we anticipated, but yet you've moved forward to try to help our kids to continue to learn. And as we move forward, hopefully we can get them caught up as quickly as possible. With that, I will go ahead and close that part of our hearing. And I want to go now to public comment. So I want to open up time for public comment. And the public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. So we'll try to give you an indication if you go on close to the 2 minutes, we'll give you an indication about 30 seconds before so you can finish on time. So BPS, if you could do the public comment.
Thank you, Chair. For public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 411, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Lindsay Anderson. LINDSAYANDERSON on behalf of the Washoe County School District, giving the inaugural Good News Minute for the 2021 legislative session. I would like to congratulate
Lindsay, hold on one second. I forgot we got so many new members, I forgot that one of the traditions that we have is to have a Good News Minute from each district if they want to. And so I forgot to do that last time and they reminded me. So I'm glad that they reminded me, and I'm glad that they remembered to jump on this time and give us the Good News Minute. So that doesn't take away from your 2 minutes. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Always exciting for us. We can't always do it every meeting, but when we can, it's always great. I'd just like to congratulate the Reno High School We the People state champions this past weekend. The members of Reno High School We the People won first place in our state, and we're very proud of them, including first place in several of the units. So congratulations to my alma mater, the Reno High Huskies, for their win this weekend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It's always good to get good news.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Mr. Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association again. After school buildings were closed last spring, NSEA members quickly responded, with classroom teachers engaging their students in distance learning and food service workers on the front lines, providing meals to families in our districts. This past year, our members have responded in a diversity of ways, depending on their district and the status of the COVID-19 crisis in their communities. Some educators are back at their school buildings offering in-person instruction. Others are working in hybrid models, juggling in-person learning with distance learning opportunities. Still others, including in Clark County, are working to create meaningful education experiences through full distance learning. Last summer, NSEA supported the work of the Department of Education to develop Nevada's Path Forward, a framework for safe, efficient, and equitable return to school buildings. We felt this was the proper framework to safely reopen and operate school buildings this school year. Educators, as much as anyone else, appreciate the importance of returning to school buildings for in-person learning. However, educators have also been very concerned about their health and the health and well-being of students. NSEA has consistently raised concerns that districts lack the resources needed to follow the recommendations to safely operate school buildings during this pandemic, and we continue to advocate for additional resources for school counselors, social workers, and psychologists to meet the mental health and social and emotional needs of our students. For our communities hardest hit by COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations, we felt strongly that educator access to vaccinations is a critical step to safer operation of school buildings. That is why NSEA asked the governor to make educators a priority in his vaccination plan. While we're hopeful all classrooms across Nevada will safely be open for in-person learning soon, we also remember our challenges from even before the pandemic. Despite many efforts to address underfunding, Nevada continues to rank near the bottom in states in most metrics. In the 2020 Quality Counts report from Education Week, Nevada ranked 47th in school finance and 50th in their overall chance for success index. And we all know Nevada is the largest class sizes in the country. There's much work to do, and NSEA stands ready to work with this committee on the challenges ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 900, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair. This is Dan Musgrove, DANMUSGROVE. I am the chair of the Clark County Children's Mental Health Consortium. As many legislators know, the consortiums statewide were created by the legislature back in 2001 to study the mental health needs of all children in Clark County, well, specifically all children in Nevada, and specifically to develop recommendations for service delivery reform. And as the chair of the Clark County Consortium and very involved with those children that are involved in the Clark County School District, we appreciate some of the statements by the superintendents about the mental health needs and their focus on mental health. But I'm not sure they realize just how pervasive it is district-wide. As you can imagine, this COVID-19 pandemic has added strain to an already stressed system, which is negatively impacting our youth and our families. You know, these children and youth have experienced fear, they've experienced grief and loss, anxiety about COVID, their family finances, and of course the online learning situation that we are in here in Clark County, as well as the isolation and the disrupted relationships they have with their friends and family. Can you imagine how it is for children with disabilities and mental health care needs who, in many cases, bear the additional burden as their parents and their caregivers attempt to meet their needs in the home setting in the absence of those necessary supports and services that a lot of times that's what they receive at school. And as we begin the transition into opening our schools safely, we ask that the Clark County School District especially follow those IEPs and those 504 plans, and to offer, as we know, the choice to families. But above all else, they must feel compassion and understanding, as these students and families must feel support rather than being punished for this situation that is not within their control. Because we've received many, many reports that schools are being punitive in this online environment. Students are experiencing stress and anxiety about lower or failing grades. You've heard talk about inaccurate absence counts, retention warnings, uncomfortable screen time, and the threats of class failure and not graduating. We've heard so much testimony from parents and mental health professionals that the methods that the schools are using for student accountability can be harmful to these students. And as we transition into in-person learning, we want those teachers and administrators just to be mindful of that, and again, show compassion and understanding. And we thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you. Next.
If you have recently joined the call and would like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 853, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 853, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michael Flores for the record, and I'm here on behalf of the University of Nevada, Reno, and I would just like to participate in the Good News Minute and just talk about you and our basketball team. We had a great little home stretch this past 2 weeks. We beat our in-state rivals, UNLV, twice, and then also Boise State, that's been top ranked in the Mountain West. So big wins for the Wolfpack, and just wanted to share that during this Good News Minute. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 030, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Mr. Chair, Brad Keating, for the record, representing the Clark County School District, BRAD, last name Keating, Keating. I cannot be outdone today by the Washoe County School District and the University of Nevada, Reno, so I bring you my own Good News Minute from the Clark County School District. We are extremely excited that for the first time in 60 years, a Nevada teacher is a finalist for the National Teacher of the Year Award. Juliana Urtubi, she's a learning strategist at Booker Elementary School in the historic West Side. She's among one of the 4 finalists for the 2021 awards. So we are extremely excited for Juliana and all of the great things she's doing, as well as our other teachers in the classroom. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Juliana and wish her the very best as she is one of the 4 national finalists for National Teacher of the Year. Thank you.
Great news.
Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no more callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead then. Any other comments from the members that they need to make at this time? The first, let's see, let me get to the right view where I can see everybody. Okay, not seeing any. So with that, our next meeting is going to be on Wednesday. So we want to thank everybody that participated today, that gave presentations, that gave comments. Got a lot of work to do this session, and as you can tell, it takes a little longer as we do this virtually, but we'll figure out ways to be concise and be able to get through our work as we go through. So welcome everyone, and once again, Senator Donati, grateful to have you on, and it'll be good to have your perspective. It's a great perspective, being much closer to graduating from high school than the rest of us. I think that's good. So with that, with nothing else to come before us, that concludes our education meeting for the day. Thank you.